We are back. Another episode of the Gold Standard here on Fox 19 Now with Charlie Goldsmith. I'm Joe Daneman. I have to be careful with the wording of these first questions because we're going to start the show with Joe Burrow. Because depending on when someone listens to this, there might be new information coming out on Friday or the weekend as we get closer to game time on Sunday. But if you're listening to this beforehand, let's just go ahead and have some fun with this. So Joe Burrow is back doing 11 on 11. He's taking snaps from Ted Karras, who's the Bengals starting center. We are taping this on Thursday, right after media availability at practice. Charlie, you were there. What's your takeaway right now on what's going on with Joe Burrow and his potential return?
Either he's cleared or he's not cleared. And not going to make this a cut and dry decision of when this timing happens. But regardless of all of that, there's still going to be some things that Burrow has to feel out along the way. Even if he doesn't return for 4 more weeks, watching him up close over the last week has been a big reminder of that. I've seen him several times, kind of a weird way to say it, playing with his toe. When he got to practice today, he unlaced his shoe. He kind of fixed his shoe, strapped it back on perfectly. There's, I don't want to say caution because, he's Burrow, he's way ahead of schedule. But even he, as aggressive as he's been, has to make sure he's very careful with what he's doing. And I think whenever he's back too, that'll translate on the field because on air he can run around and throw the ball and do all that. I think he can do that now. But how can he, plant while taking a hit in a similar situation to the one he got hurt? You can't know what that situation is. So regardless, there's just still so much of uncertainty whether he's cleared or not.
Okay, so I've noticed what you've noticed about him, as you said, messing with his toe, testing it. It's almost like sometimes he's rocking back and forth on it just to see if it can take the weight. And that was last week when I saw him do that. But you said, and you've maintained all along, that there's this debate here in Cincinnati. Should Joe Burrow play if the Bengals aren't in playoff contention? You've maintained all along, if he's cleared, he should play.
I have said that from the very beginning. Joe Burrow should play this year. I don't know that Joe Burrow should play this week. I want to get him more reps.
Yeah.
What I'm reminded of is 2022. Burrow has the appendectomy. Burrow misses all of training camp. Burrow takes the field against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and for the entire first half, looks like he's never seen a defense before. His ability to just have that feel in the pocket, to diagnose the game, was miserable. I believe his first throw was a pick six to Minkah Fitzpatrick. That's the situation the Burrow's operating under now. He doesn't get a chance to ramp up. I guess the only chance he has is practice, and 2 days of 11 on 11 to me wouldn't be enough to have Burrow feeling comfortable enough, unless Burrow can just prove us wrong again, which would be wild. But history suggests even Burrow needs a bit more time.
I don't think it's fair for me to say this feels rushed. It feels rushed to us from the outside. Maybe this has been internally what the Bengals have been planning on for now a couple of months to try to get him back for this game. But when he talked, it felt like the target date was Thursday night in Baltimore. The other part of this, too, would be, is it the right decision to try to play him 2 games in 4 days? If you cut him loose against the New England Patriots, then he's your starting quarterback, obviously, on Thursday night against the Baltimore Ravens. But the idea of Joe Burrow being ready, to me, is what would be the motivation to rush him? Again, if that's the right word, to rush him to play this week, because it felt to everybody that any chance the Bengals had of making any kind of run at the postseason died in Pittsburgh. They're 3-7. It doesn't feel like they have much of a chance to go to the playoffs. So again, maybe it's wrong to say the word rush, but it does feel like they're trying to rush him to get ready for Sunday. What would be the motivation of ramping up this timeline to get Joe Burrow out there as soon as possible?
Burrow wants to do it, and that's a very powerful thing around Paycor Stadium. Wants to play probably as soon as he can. That's what he wants to do, and if that's this week, that's how that timing looks. I also believe there's something to sending a message to the whole team. Hey, look at this guy, the highest paid player, I believe, in football, going like crazy to come back for a 3-7 team to play a team that's 9-2, and hoping that spreads a message and signals something about the culture that impacts kind of how people around the building are carrying themselves. But hopefully the way they make this decision is much clearer headed than that. This should not be impacted by the team's record. This should not be impacted by Joe Flacco's shoulder. This should be impacted by whether or not Burrow's cleared and whether or not he's had enough reps to actually play quarterback the way he needs to.
Now, the idea, if he does play, and something you wrote about, is the idea of September Burrow. You wrote about this on Charlie's Chalkboard on Fox19now.com. We've seen September Burrow before. It takes Joe sometimes a few weeks to look like himself, and I would think this would be no different. The guy hasn't played since week 2, that he's not going to jump right onto the field and throw for 400 yards.
And I think back to, I actually have been meaning to go back to the 2025 week 1 tape this week, but I remember very clearly the 2024 week 1 tape against the Patriots. Burrow was on the move a lot during that game. He was running around. You don't want to do this. But he did a thing where he was like facing the line like in a triple threat and shuffling around. And while you don't want to play quarterback that way, there's a lot of agility and mobility. You use your big toe a lot when you are in that type of frantic mode because you're not as comfortable as you need to be. And then sometimes when you're not seeing the field and you miss your chance for an easy pass, well, then you need to scramble and create something. So September Burrow needs his legs. Does Burrow have that right now? You really can't know until he takes a hit and pushes off.
September Burrow needs his legs. The 2025 Bengals need Trey Hendrickson. Will we see Trey Hendrickson play another down for the Cincinnati Bengals this season?
So it's been a very, very weird situation. The weirdest part to me of all of this is that from even just a listing standpoint, it started as a back, then it became a hip, then it became a hip/pelvis. And Zach Taylor, asked him about it. He was like, I said, is the pelvis injury a new injury? He said it's a similar injury. And I'm not criticizing Zach's wording or anything like that. That's a very odd thing to say. How could it be a similar injury? It's either a new injury that you hurt and aggravate, and it's hurt or aggravate, and it's brand new, and there goes my hip. Or it's just the old injury. Oh, it's always just been a hip pelvis injury, and now we just have more information. The fact that it's a similar injury is very strange. I haven't seen Trey around as much. I've been thinking a lot kind of on a separate point about Trey, that all of his friends are just gone now. And what's he connected to on this team? That's been a thought in my head, but I don't know that there is any plan of what to expect with Trey Hendrickson.
Okay, another defensive player that this team was counting on to be one of their best defensive players is Cam Taylor-Britt. Have we seen Cam Taylor-Britt's last snap in Cincinnati?
I talked to some people around the building around Cam over the last couple days. It feels like it. Still, and this will sound like the company lie, but they genuinely believe this. They were really satisfied and very pleased with the way he responded to being inactive against Pittsburgh. Say what you want about Cam. He tackled over the last 3 weeks. He didn't have those or as many just true mistakes with technique and assignment and all of that stuff that kind of defined the first half of this season. And he had a good look in his eye again. They liked what they saw, and that at least makes a sliver of an opportunity of Cam coming back, I would say, in 2026, ending the year on the note he did. Before that positive stretch of games, I thought there was no chance. Now there's a bit more of a chance, but I think it's best for both sides to go in different directions.
Okay, we talked about Trey Hendrickson and Cam Taylor-Britt. You and Paul Dehner Jr. on the podcast you do together talked to Al Golden this week about some of the film that you guys watched, 3rd and longs in Pittsburgh. What was your biggest takeaway from your conversation with the Bengals defensive coordinator on how they played in Pittsburgh?
Well, it all keeps going back to every conversation you have about this game comes to those 3rd and longs. And he used the phrase, kind of a fun phrase, you've got to populate the ball. Multiple guys, attack, congregate. He brought this up, the Steelers ran the same play twice. The dump off to 311-pound tight end Darnell Washington. The first time there were 6 guys around the ball, but he tried to jump over someone. Jordan Battle leveled him. Bengals get the stop. The second time, there were guys who were hesitant. There were guys who were out of the play. He dragged some guys. He got the first down. You need that congregation. You need that attitude. Now, what that reflects about these Bengals defenders individually, I just see a bunch of guys who are bad tacklers and have bad instincts as opposed to guys who don't want to play football. Like, I think Josh Newton wants to play football. I think Geno Stone truly wants to play football. I think Geno Stone, just the way he views angles, is some of the worst in the entire recent history of the NFL. Like when you look at the guys who have been their worst tacklers and are making the worst mistakes, it's not like these problems have gotten worse because the season's fallen off the brink and there's a bigger tight end coming. They're just as bad when, the Bengals theoretically are, 8-2 and it's, me running down the field, not me, but like a small receiver running down the field. The consistency of that trend, you just got to be aware and get to the ball is the message the coaches are all stressing.
311-pound Darnell Washington. You saw the clip then with
I did.
Ross St. Brown where he admitted he is 311 pounds. That was a runaway train in Pittsburgh. He wrote an article, Charlie's Chalkboard. The header was, "What do the Bengals do now?" And the first line of that story was, quote, "They just don't have the talent." Okay, they play the Patriots this week. The Patriots are tied for the best record in football. I'm on record. I think something gets weird this Sunday. I don't think the Patriots are built to blow teams out. I saw them on Thursday Night Football against the New York Jets, and the New York Jets are on the same tier with the Bengals right now, maybe even a tier below, even though they beat the Bengals. And they made that a 4-quarter game against the New England Patriots. What's the path for the Bengals to upset the Patriots at home on Sunday? Whether Joe Burrow plays or Joe Flacco plays, they're going to be down Jamar Chase. They're going to be down Trey Hendrickson. Who knows who plays quarterback at this point? What's the path for the Bengals to beat New England?
I've been thinking a lot about the style of game the Bengals need to play. Like every Saturday morning before a game, the Bengals coordinators, Zach, their analytics guy, sit down and they say, what type of game is this going to be? And then they talk about how that impacts their decision in the coin toss, their decisions on fourth downs, 2-point conversions, all that type of stuff. The Patriots in week 1 last year, they were the team with no offense. Not that the Bengals have no offense, and the Bengals had all their high-powered weapons. I guess T ended up missing that game.
Yep.
But the Patriots said, we're going to suck the life out of this game. We're going to play the time of possession battle. We're going to try to be opportunistic. Turnovers are our key. And we're going to force the Bengals to make some mistakes. I think now the shoe is completely on the other foot. When you take Jamar out of this game, whether, being cautious, because even if it's Burrow, you want to be cautious in Burrow's first game back and not have him throwing the ball 50 times and running all over the lot, or if it's Flacco with a banged up shoulder, do what the Patriots did against you last time. Take the air out of the game, limit possessions, use your run game, use safe opportunities for your passing game. Some of those can be some quick hitting moments for Higgins. Some of them can be gadget plays that where you hand the ball off to Charlie Jones and see what happens. And then your defense continues to be, the hope is, and they haven't been this yet, tackle and turnover.
Yeah.
Like just tackle and try to get whichever Joe the ball 1 or 2 times. That's the formula the Patriots used at Paycor last year. And because now it's the Patriots who have the most explosive offense in the league, that's, I think, the model the Bengals have to take this week.
Populate the ball against the Patriots. Okay. Taking a break from the Bengals, we'll come back to them in the Gold Rush. Let's transition quickly to the Cincinnati Reds. And Nick Kroll this week was on the Reds Hot Stove League radio show and said that Elly De La Cruz played the second half of last season with a partially torn quad. We all knew he was banged up. We all saw the production dive in the second half of the season. When you heard that, were you surprised?
I had an idea. But also what I know is that Ellie's sprint speeds analytically were going up in August and September. And that he did end the season on a positive trajectory. So, yes, terrible mistake that the Reds didn't give Ellie an off day, multiple off days over the course of the year. The fact that he was out there every day, wrong thing to do. It was also an injury that got better over the course of the season based on what the numbers showed that made them more than comfortable enough once they reached the must-win stage of keeping him out there. And remember, too, Ellie actually got hot over the last 2 weeks of September, and he had his better moments then. Now, again, how they handled kind of the, late July to, early September, wrong. But what they saw then down the stretch gave them whatever sort of confidence they needed at the time to keep doing what they were doing. That's why I'm not too concerned about this long-term for the future, but still a bad thing they did during the season.
You also wrote on Charlie's Chalkboard, and you've talked a lot on this show about the idea that the Reds' biggest need is to rework their bullpen here in the offseason. And you said on this show that the amount of money they have to spend, Raisel Iglesias just got a 1-year, $16 million deal to return to the Braves as their closer. Closer is going to be a big topic here in Cincinnati. Are the Reds out of the market for a traditional, someone who has proven he can do it closer for 2026.
That was my takeaway from the Iglesias contract. Now, maybe, and this is how it works sometimes, like if Iglesias was in a spot where he was going to take a 2-year deal, maybe that's 2 years for $24 million and the price goes down a bit. But for a team with $15 to $20 million to work with the closing market being established to be what it just was, I don't see them getting any of the top 2 tiers of closer free agents unless you're able to really find value with Pagan, who they'd probably love to bring back. Yeah. But there are still enough guys with closing experience. My favorite on the market is Paul Sewald, who is not going to be a sexy move at all whatsoever, but he checks a lot of the boxes, will be relatively cheap, and maybe you hope can make an adjustment with the Reds to get back on track.
Let's go now to the Gold Rush. These are rapid-fire questions for Charlie. We're going to jump back to the Bengals here. Jamar Chase suspended for Sunday's game against the Patriots. Which player in the wide receiver room needs to step up most without Jamar Chase?
I'm going to say Andre Yosivas. Now, Mitch Tinsley, I expect to step into the lineup and to get opportunities. I also expect Charlie Jones to rotate in, Tanner Hudson as an extra tight end to rotate in. But with the Steelers having a really standout corner, Christian Gonzalez, what have they learned about Yoshi that they feel like they can scheme around, that they can game plan for? They've even given him opportunities in small sample sizes to set him up for yards after the catch opportunities. Well, now's the chance to expand on that. It feels like it's been a while since we've seen his best route. Showed it a lot as a rookie, that back shoulder ball. Yeah. Let's see that. Let's take some shots outside of the numbers. What are the specific plays you can have on your call sheet that are for Andre Yosivas? The one we've seen most recently kind of as a secondary option that seam up the middle with him making a tough catch in space. Are any of those concepts things you can really game plan for against this Patriots D?
He had a tough stretch. He's bounced back a little bit. Is Jermaine Burton going to be active, do you think?
I'll answer the question in a second. What's funny is they kind of need him to be because they have a secret, not secret, but in the weeds roster crunch right now. I don't know how they get the right 48 players on the roster.
Favorite stuff.
So you need the guys on the roster to be able to contribute. They actually are going to maybe need to make a roster move or two. I don't think Burton's going to be a part of the plan this week.
Okay.
He has had every opportunity to make an impact on special teams this year. I think outside of Charlie Jones, maybe even along with Charlie Jones, despite his touchdown, I think Burton might be the best kick returner on the team. And the fact that he hasn't even done enough just to be eligible as a kick returner and a backup punt returner, which they don't have. Obviously, you want to have that. That to me is very concerning.
And to your point about everybody who is active needs to contribute, if he's active, how could you possibly trust him? Yeah. Considering he's been in and out of the practice lineup, hasn't been active for a while. Okay, you do a lot of film work here of the Bengals. 2-part question. The first one will be, who is the under-the-radar surprising player who is popping on film that maybe Bengals fans aren't noticing? Is there anybody
in a positive way?
Right? In a positive way.
So everyone loves ripping on the coaches. I love ripping on the coaches. That's a lot of fun. The Bengals coaches did something really good on Sunday against the Steelers, and this is the answer to your question. The Steelers, through the kitchen sink at Jamar Chase, we are not letting him beat us. And they also, with Joey Porter, a fantastic corner, did a strong job on T. Higgins. The coaches said, we got something. We're going to have different sort of double moves, different sort of streaks down the field seams for Noah Fant. And it was there. Noah ran 2 fantastic routes that could have easily been deep touchdowns that Flacco didn't have enough time to get off. But those were there. One of them on a play that was followed by the pick 6. So instead of a pick 6, it could have been a 40-yard touchdown to Fant. One of them was on a sack in the fourth quarter that absolutely killed a drive that resulted in a field goal, literally a 4-point swing. So the job Fant's done to get open, the play he made, what should have been, I believe, the game-winning or one of the go-ahead comeback touchdowns against the Bears. He has had a really valuable season, done solid work as a blocker. I feel very good about his year.
Okay, so that was under the radar, surprising performer from watching the film. Okay, staying in the film. Who is the under-the-radar, disappointing performer that fans might not be noticing here through the first half of the season?
Especially relevant this week, now that Cam Taylor-Britt's out. Every time that Josh Newton's gotten an opportunity, it really hasn't gone well this year.
He was your guy.
He was. He wasn't just my guy. Listen to this. Josh Newton started week 1 over DJ Turner.
Yeah.
Let me say that again. Josh Newton started week 1 over
Unbelievable.
DJ Turner. And his effort, not his effort, but his finish and awareness and downhill and just go get the guy as a tackler is just missing. On the Colson Loveland TD that beat the Bengals, against Chicago, Newton was in the wrong spot. I think Jalen Davis will take the starting spot that is open with Cam Taylor-Britt now injured indefinitely.
Okay, we will finish off this week's episode with the Gold Nugget. This is Charlie's segment where he gets to dive into his notebook and share a great nugget from his reporting throughout the week. What do you have for us this week in the Gold Nugget?
I really enjoyed talking to Mitchell Tinsley, a guy stepping into that wide receiver 3 spot. And kind of the moral of that story, especially talking to coaches about Tinsley, is we want and we need more guys like this, was the message coming from them. There is plenty of opportunity, especially on defense, for you, yes, you, to make a difference on the Bengals in 2025 during these last 7 games. And they're saying, be like Mitch. Look at Mitch. The most important thing he did, the coaches say, was in OTAs when they needed someone because someone stubbed their toe to step in and do a random route in the slot. Tinsley knew what to do. Then when, a receiver twisted his ankle and you needed a third-string helper guy to do some blocking, Tinsley knew what to do. And then one of those days, one of those spots was to run a deep route down the field that was there in practice that Browning connected with him on, and the rest was history. So that is the vision, that's the lesson that they're hoping a lot of these young guys look up to.
You came to Bengals Now for the first time this week. You got to see the live show at Newport on the Levee. What was it like for you? Did you have fun?
I think not just did I have fun. I think everyone in the room got exactly what they were looking for, exactly what they came for. The DJ set the tone. Unbelievable energy coming from the playlist. Kendall Milton's a really fun guy. Braylon Lux is he was doing like the dun 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 when the cornhole guy missed his shots. Like, there was a lot of energy, enthusiasm. I always like seeing people kind of in different scenery. And this was the best opportunity I've seen just to see these Bengals players in a completely different setting.
Well, you should see what it's like when the Bengals are on a win streak and the crowds are big, and that's coming. That'll come back here at some point. Maybe even this year, we'll see if the Bengals can get on a roll. Again, we don't know what's going to happen with Joe Burrow as of this taping, but it does feel imminent that Joe Burrow, you would agree, is going to play this year.
Yes, I feel very confident about that.
All right, that's Charlie Goldsmith. I'm Joe Danneman. We do this every single week right here on Fox 19 Now. Thanks for watching and listening to another episode of the Gold Standard Podcast.